is reimbursement from state or insurance companies. When we get money from state insurance companies, that covers the cost of the procedure. The money that we use for our operating costs also comes from donors. What we can see from this is that really the money that we're bringing in from the reimbursement and the donors is about enough to cover our current costs as a hospital. And if we switch to the process of not using medical repatriation, we're not going to be able to remain financially solvent as a hospital. In fact, we know this from past experience. In the past, as a hospital, we have attempted to supply rehabilitative services for all patients, whether they're insured or uninsured. This has led to a situation in the hospital where we were losing money and we were not going to be able to be financially solvent. We were underfunded, under-resourced, and we weren't providing the optimal level of health care that we could as a hospital. By switching to medical repatriation, what this has allowed us to do is save costs. In fact, this has also allowed us to run a surplus. In order to see this, we can switch to the next slide. This shows the Medicare service for a hospital of similar size to ours. What we can see right here is that a hospital of similar size ended up spending a little under $250,000, and they ended up saving a little under $2.5 million. The fact that we're able to save about 9/10 of what we could have spent means that we're able to run a large surplus as a hospital. We have used this surplus to reinvest in the community, and I recommend that we continue this reinvestment process for really two reasons. First of all is the public relations reason. As Dr. Emert pointed out, the community is very involved in this case, and they're going to be very invested in whatever decision we make. There's going to be people who are dissatisfied if we treat Mr. Yanez and future patients like him, and there's going to be people who are dissatisfied if we choose not to treat Mr. Yanez and future patients like him. The fact is, no matter what decision we make, there are going to be donors who are dissatisfied, and that's going to eventually affect our bottom line. The fact is, we can use the surplus to mitigate that dissatisfaction. We have invested in community healthcare projects such as preventative care, prenatal care, and screening programs. This allows us to enhance the community, and we believe that if properly funded and properly conveyed to the community, this will mitigate the damage caused from the loss of donors. Furthermore, we see this second advantage is that this surplus in healthcare funds will eventually lead to a healthier community overall, and a healthier community in the long run will lead to cost savings on our part. Numerous studies have shown that preventative care is far more financially sound than emergency care. This means that treating a patient, catching a disease early on, saves us a whole lot more money than emergency care. In the long term, what we can see is by switching to preventative care, we are able to save money because in the long run saves money, grow a bigger surplus, and reinvest that money back into the community. Furthermore, we see legal justifications for this program we're doing. Now, we need to first recognize the difference between the legal justifications and the financial and ethical justifications. When we're talking about financial and ethical justifications, there's a level of analysis that we can put into it. We can say, well, we're saving this much money, but we could be saving that much money. Or with the ethical justifications, we could say, well, these are the values which we hold true, and this is how much we're meeting those values. However, legal justifications are a simple yes or no. We're either being legal, we're either complying with government regulations, or we're not. But that simple fact doesn't mean that they're not important. If we choose not to comply with legal justifications, we're going to either be fined by the U.S. federal government or shut down, which in the long run will hamper our ability to operate at an optimal level as a hospital. This is why we choose to comply with these legal standards, and we believe that the medical repatriation program does meet all these requirements of the legal standards. First of all, there are limits that the government places on us about how we can act. The first is the Emergency Medical Treatment and Active Labor Act. This says that we must stabilize all patients regardless of insurance or citizenship status when they come into our hospital. We do that under the current program of medical repatriation, and we believe by continuing this program, we are not breaking that law. Furthermore, there are other states, other than Arizona, which subsidize long-term rehabilitative care to undocumented and uninsured patients. Obviously, Arizona is not one of those states. It would be illegal for us to transport our patients from our state to those other states. So the government is also limiting the options we can take once we have stabilized those patients. Finally, we realize that every person under the jurisdiction of the U.S. Department of Justice is afforded the constitutional rights, regardless of citizenship status, and we continue to recognize those constitutional rights regardless of the fact that they're undocumented and uninsured patients. Finally, we see an ethical justification for our actions of medical repatriation. We see three competing obligations. First, we see an obligation that we have as a hospital. As a hospital, we essentially have a contract with the community. We have told the community that we will provide a high quality of acute care and we will facilitate further rehabilitative care. We see that we continue to do this under medical repatriation. And furthermore, if we do not switch to the medical repatriation program, we're not going to be able to operate at an optimal level, and we're not going to be able to provide the high quality care which we have promised the community that we have provided. The only way to fulfill our obligation as a hospital is by choosing to use this medical repatriation program. Furthermore, we see our obligation as doctors as equally important in this situation. As doctors, we have sworn the Hippocratic Oath, and we have said that we will provide care whenever we can. In Mr. Yanez's case, we're not able to provide care at our hospital or in the United States. However, we ensure that undocumented and uninsured workers are able to be given long-term rehabilitative care, whether it be in our hospital or in their country of origin. We ensure that everyone is going to receive care. Finally, we see an obligation to take the best choice possible in this situation, essentially to maximize the benefits for all stakeholders. We believe we do this. Mr. Yanez and his family are benefited because they are able to receive a high quality of health care and their family is going to be supported. Our hospitals benefit because our doors are able to remain open and we are going to be able to operate at our optimal level. And the community is benefited because we are able to keep our doors open, continue providing health care to the community, and reinvest the surplus funds we have into the community, leading to a healthier community at large. It is for this reason, the financial, ethical, and legal reasons, that we feel that the process and program of medical repatriation is justifiable. I'll give it back to Dr. Emert to sum up this case.
Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez. Recent studies have shown that approximately 93% of non-citizens living in the United States under the age of 65 have no health insurance. There are approximately 9.3 million undocumented and uninsured people living in the United States currently. This is a problem that is highly impacting in southern Arizona and highly impacting our area of responsibility at St. Mark's Hospital. Ladies and gentlemen of the Board of Directors, my team and I have decided that the best way for us to ensure that our hospital is able to meet the responsibility we have to the community to provide a high level of high quality health care is to advocate a policy of medical repatriation. We are one of the best hospitals in the country at providing emergency care, but rehabilitative care is not our strong suit. We recognize that and advocate the policy of medical repatriation so that all patients who come through our doors are able to receive the high quality of rehabilitative care that they deserve. Thank you very much, and I welcome any questions you may have for myself or Dr. Gonzalez.
Have you looked at the quality of care in Mexico and the availability of that care?
Yes, sir. Mexican healthcare is actually a lot better than most people think it is. About 1 million California citizens, U.S. citizens residing in California, approximately 1 million a year go to Mexico for healthcare. So these are U.S. citizens who have the option oftentimes of going to our American healthcare system. They choose to go to Mexico because the Mexican system is by no means a slacking healthcare system.
So one of our obligations is to make sure that they're properly discharged. And I see in our case, having them discharged to a Mexican facility seems like an appropriate. What about the illegal immigrants that are from Mexico? Because that's just a small fraction. I mean, Guatemala and San Salvador, there's many others that are here that those systems are far inferior to Mexico and the U.S.
Yes, sir. We emphasize Mexico in this presentation because that's where our patient, Mr. Yanez, is from. However, the company we contract, MexCare, operates in over 10 countries and has over 30 facilities in those countries. So this is an option not just in Mexico, but throughout Latin America.
Right, and I understand that, again, those other countries don't have the same medical options that Mexico does. So do we treat them differently, or do we just assume that they're going to get good care?
MexCare ensures that every patient that they send to a hospital in whatever country of origin that they're from has a high quality of health care. They ensure that they're going to be able to receive the treatment that they need to receive. It's important to recognize the difference right now between the rehabilitative services and the emergency services. Oftentimes there is a large difference between the United States and Mexico in emergency services and what we can do when a patient's life is on the line. However, once you start getting into rehabilitative services, we're talking, there's less of a place for there to be a difference. And the quality of care is roughly similar in both the United States and Mexico when we're talking about rehabilitative services, and other Latin American countries.
Something we also have to keep in mind is MexCare, I mentioned those 30 healthcare facilities, they work with specific institutions. MexCare doesn't just take the patient down to, say, Guatemala or any other country they're working in and drop the patient off at the closest hospital. MexCare has developed a relationship with these institutions and knows that they provide quality health care.
You mentioned the importance of the optionality of this program. What if the family does not agree?
We offer MexCare as an optional program because we recognize that oftentimes patients will not agree. Under U.S. law, people who have been living in the United States for a period of less than 1 year illegally are banned from re-entering the country under legal processes for at least 3 years. People who have been living in the United States for over a year are banned from re-entering for at least 10 years. Because of this, we recognize that many of these undocumented immigrants will not want to accept this program. We see our obligation to offer this health care. MexCare offers them quality rehabilitative care at no cost to the patient. We cover part of the care, MexCare covers part of the care. The patient receives no cost themselves. We cannot force this care upon patients, and it is their choice whether or not they want to accept it. We deem that once we've stabilized these patients and have offered them this option, their health care is in their own hands. They can choose to accept it, choose the quality rehabilitative care, or choose not to. The same applies to U.S. citizens. If we offer a citizen certain types of treatment, they often have to sign a waiver saying they agree to it. We can't mandate that sort of treatment. So it doesn't, we don't really see a difference between the U.S. citizens and the Mexican or other multinational citizens in regards to the care being optional. Once we have given them the option of quality health care at no cost to them, and if they don't want to choose it, we can't force them to. Yes, sir.
So we're a community hospital, and all of us tonight when we go home have to go out into the community, face some hostile people in the community. How do you, and they don't care whether MexCare is a valid option or not. They just don't want to see someone who is undocumented and have to go back to Mexico. How do you suggest we deal with our obligations to the community and our current PR problems you pointed out?
Well, as we explained in the presentation, what we're going to do is we're going to use that surplus fund and reinvest in the community. And we believe that if we properly advertise that and properly convey that to the community, that's going to mitigate a lot of the anger and I guess dissatisfaction they feel over us sending Mr. Yanez back to Mexico. But ultimately, we see this as we really have no choice but to send Mr. Yanez back to his country of origin, or supply Mr. Yanez with that option in this case. Basically because of the fact that if we don't, we're not going to be able to remain financially solvent as a hospital. We're not going to be able to keep our doors open, and we're not going to be able to essentially continue to serve the community as we have in the past.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well done.